Now this is how you make a sequel.
The first Potter game on the PC was a pretty decent start to the series. It definitely captured the magic that fans were looking for, and it was a game I replayed constantly at the time. That being said, it does have a number of flaws that holds it back from being a really great game. Chamber of Secrets, on the other hand, takes everything I love about the first game and cranks it up to
394.
The first big difference we see is that the storybook cutscenes are gone and replaced with real-time cutscenes, meaning the game doesn't have to keep grinding to a halt to give important plot points. Speaking of the plot, we get a much better telling of the story here than in the previous game. Pretty much all the important details are included, which should make it easier for people who aren't familiar with the story to follow along.
Although at this point, I guess it really doesn't matter, since nobody's accidentally buying these games, but I'm sure it was important at the time.
I do feel like I should mention some things that didn't seem to make the cut. For example, it's never explained that looking into the eyes of a basilisk will kill you, and that the only reason Hermione and Mrs. Norris survived is because they didn't look at it directly. And Nick's already dead, so I guess he was just being overly dramatic. And Dobby only appears in the opening cutscene, although with a model like that, maybe that's for the best.
Harry Potter must not go back to Hogwarts.
This also means that the reason Harry and Ron missed the Hogwarts Express isn't because Dobby blocked the entrance to the platform, it's because they are incompetent and didn't realise the time.
In fact, I can't tell what's worse, those two being stupid or the fact the Weasleys were so neglectful that they left 2 children behind.
We finally crash into the Whomping Willow, and it's at this point I realise that something has gone terribly wrong with the upscale. So from here on out, we're playing the game old school.
Really putting that 4K monitor of mine to good use.
Anyway, we finally get some gameplay, and hot damn is this an improvement. The tank controls from the previous game are gone, meaning Harry can now strafe and cast spells at the same time.
Kids today, they just grow up so fast.
The freedom that the new controls give you makes the gameplay feel so much faster, since you don't have to stop every couple of seconds waving your wand around hoping to find a secret passage, and combat no longer feels like a chore. Which is just as well, because there seems to be a lot more of it this time around. I'm also happy to say that you don't have to relearn all the spells from the previous game, although Ron seems to feel the need to explain to me what Alohomora is right after I cast it.
Alohomora can open up magically locked objects such as chests and secret doors.
Like, how stupid do you think I am, dude? You're the one stuck in a tree! After saving Ron's useless ass, we finish the tutorial, and this is where things start to get really good, because in this game, you can explore the entirety of Hogwarts completely at your leisure. I can't even begin to express how happy this made me, considering the last game was completely linear. The only thing we got close to this before was the PS1 port, and even that was kind of all over the place. But this is exploration done right. There are so many more secrets to find here, and the only time you'll ever be limited in your exploring is if you come across an area that requires a spell you haven't unlocked. But that just makes it all the more interesting to go back to those areas later on. The collectibles from the previous game have returned, and this time they have been given a major overhaul, to the point where I actually care about them this time. Fred and George now have a bunch of little minions offering things such as potion ingredients, wizard cards, and Quidditch gear in return for Bertie Bott's every flavour beans. You can even buy the Nimbus 2001, but I considered this to be sacrilege and avoided it. Not to mention, Quidditch hardly ever plays a massive role in these games anyway, but we'll talk more on that later. What I really want to get into is the wizard cards, since they actually serve more of a purpose this time round. There are 3 types of cards you can collect: bronze, silver, and gold. There are 50 bronze cards available, and for every 10 you collect, Harry will gain an extra health bar. As for the silver cards, there are only 40 of those, and if you collect them all, you'll unlock a secret room. Now, this right here is what gives me the incentive to find them all. But what about the gold cards, I hear you ask? Well, we'll also get to that later. First, we gotta go learn some spells. We learn 4 new spells this time around. Ricta Sempra is used to stun enemies, which is a little weird because in the last game that was Flipendo's job. Scourge is used to destroy ectoplasm that's lying around, because apparently the ghosts here are nasty. Diffindo is used to cut rope, vines, webs, and mushrooms. It's also used to destroy plants like venomous tentacula and spiky bushes, which was Incendio's job in the last game and has been completely ditched here. Finally, we have my favourite spell, Spongify, which is used on special carpets that when activated will propel Harry through the air. I can't tell you how much fun this spell is, especially when you use it on the grand staircase. Whee!
Severus, there's something I have to tell you. It's vitally important that we keep Harry alive until the right moment. Defeating Voldemort for good depends on it.
Oh, well, I wish you told me that sooner. What do you mean? I bet him 100 beans that he couldn't jump off the 7th floor without killing himself.
You really have a knack for f***ing everything up, Severus,
Dumbledore said calmly.
Well, everything except Lily. Well, that was just rude. Learning spells is a lot like the last game, but with some minor changes. You still have to go through a session where you trace the outline of the spell, however, this is no longer done with the mouse. Instead, you play a rhythm minigame with the keyboard. This makes things much easier, especially if you were using a mechanical mouse at the time. Although, it's maybe a little too easy. It's just as well there are only 4 spells, because this gets old fast. After learning each spell, Harry goes into a challenge room. The goal here is to reach the completion star before the timer runs out. On the way, you'll find little challenge stars which will give you extra time as well as points. The more time you have when you reach the completion star, the more house points you'll get. Which is handy because the house points actually serve a purpose now. Every now and then, Dumbledore will announce which house is in the lead. This will allow one student to go into the bonus bean room. It's exactly as it sounds. It's a room full of beans. This is quite a fun little reward, since there are beans you won't be able to reach until you unlock certain spells. And you're also on a timer, so you're always in a mad rush to collect as many beans as possible. And just in case you're wondering, yes, you can miss out on getting into this room if you don't rack up enough house points. So it's important to try and get as many of them as possible. One way to do that is by playing Quidditch. You can access these matches at any time at the Hogwarts grounds, and as you progress through the game, you'll unlock the next round. Now, the gameplay has been simplified since the last time as it's on rails, which means you can't go flying wherever you please. Instead, you use the arrow keys to keep in line with the snitch. Doing that will fill up this snitch meter, and once that's full, you'll have the opportunity to catch it. However, you will also be up against enemy seekers who also have a progress bar, just so you can see how screwed you are. One way to stop them winning is by beating them to death so that their lifeless body limps over their broom. Okay, they're not really dead, but seriously, it looks like I killed Cedric 2 books early. I wouldn't say the Quidditch is great, but if you don't enjoy it, you can pretty much avoid it after the tutorial. The game also includes a version of the Dueling Club, where you fight various students with each one increasing in difficulty. This is a great way of racking up more beans, especially early on when you don't have access to many of the secret areas. Here, you will use Rictus Empra to damage your opponent, along with 2 new spells that can only be used during duels. Don't worry, you don't need to go through that rhythm minigame to learn these ones. Expelliarmus can be used to deflect the other person's spells, and Mimblewimble stops your opponent from casting. It's a nice little addition, and it helped feed my craving for buying more Silver Wizard cards. Speaking of which, if you manage to explore every nook and cranny of the castle and beaten the Basilisk, why is the Sword of Gryffindor casting spells? Then you should have all the Silver Wizard cards to unlock the secret room. Here, you are treated to this obstacle course where you need to collect as many of the gold wizard cards before the timer runs out. Each card you collect unlocks this giant version which you can view in the gallery, which is pretty cool. This section is really well designed and incredibly fun. It's a nice little reward for taking the time to find all those cards, and way more satisfying than what we got in the previous game. Now, before we wrap this up, there is one mechanic that I almost forgot about until I reached the end of this edit, and that's the inclusion of potion making. If you come across a cauldron on your travels and you've got some Wiggentree bark and flubberworm mucus, Harry will be able to create a healing potion which he can stock up on and use at any time. The thing is, I didn't feel the need to use them because I always found enough chocolate frogs to regain my health instead. I think it would have been much better to just ditch the chocolate frogs and focus only on the potions so that trading ingredients had more of a purpose. And you'd have to think about stocking up before your next adventure. Either that or there should have been an option to have a higher difficulty mode where you only rely on the potions. Well, that's that.
Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets for the PC. A huge improvement over the first game, and was an absolute blast to revisit. I hope I'll see you in the next video where we'll take a look at the PS1 port.